Since we're talking about the Republican ticket and their business practices relative to workers, we just heard Donald Trump slur his way through an hour plus conversation with Elon Musk, basically saying, if workers go on strike, you fire them. That's what you do, which is illegal. You can't threaten to fire workers that are on strike. Here is CNN speaking to workers at a Kentucky startup that J.D. Vance helped fund. Now, here's the thing. When you're a venture capitalist and you go in and fund these companies, this is not, and particularly at the stage in which he does this, this is not like, here's some money, talk to me in 6 months.
Right.
Give it to workers.
No, you guys go in, though. These guys go in and they supposedly sort of like make sure that everybody's on the right track. They interview the leadership. Sometimes they replace the leadership. Sometimes they basically put down edicts as to how you're supposed to operate these things. We don't have details of how involved J.D. Vance was in this, but I can assure you it's not like he just dropped a check in the mail and never heard of this company before.
He is J.D. Vance, the Republican nominee for vice president.
I will be a vice president who never forgets where he came from.
Leaning on his personal rise out of poverty to reach swing state voters as Donald Trump's running mate.
I chose him because he's for the worker. He's for the people that work so hard. Perhaps weren't treated like they should have been.
But before politics, Vance was a venture capitalist.
Pause it for 1 second. Can I just also say that when Donald Trump gets sing-songy, you know that like the word, the sentiment is stuck in his head and he can't get it out. So he's got to be like, I'm going to spend a little bit of extra effort to make it seem like I don't have total disdain. So he's for the worker.
I don't mean this.
Yeah, the guy who represents investors is for the worker.
Go back just a little bit. Yeah.
Where he came from.
Leaning on his personal rise out of poverty to reach swing state voters as Donald Trump's running mate.
I chose him because he's for the worker. He's for the people that work so hard and perhaps weren't treated like they should have been.
But before politics, Vance was a venture capitalist and AppHarvest's first outside investor, eventually steering millions of dollars to the company. Vance was a lead pitchman for the vertical farming startup, tweeting he was a supporter and investor, writing, "I love this company."
It's a great business that's making a big difference in the world.
The company's investor presentation pledged a commitment to Appalachia, estimating thousands of new jobs to a poverty-stricken area.
Good.
A major emphasis with them was, we want to bring work to Eastern Kentucky. This is why we are here.
Morgan left a stable job to join AppHarvest as a crop care specialist, pruning the greenhouse-grown vegetables. A single father with 6-year-old twins, the job rapidly turned when production fell behind under what a dozen workers described to CNN as mismanagement, including dangerous conditions. Employees filed multiple complaints to the state and federal government alleging heat exhaustion, working in extreme temperatures, and lack of water breaks, though the cases were all closed with no citations.
Cost money.
I think about the hottest that I experienced was around 128 degrees. Inside. A couple days a week, you'd have ambulance show up, and you've seen people leaving on gurneys to go to the hospital.
The cuts came next to promised worker benefits, and then foreign workers came in to fill those so-called local jobs.
The second round of folks they brought in was folks on work visas, and they didn't bring just a van full. They brought bus loads.
Documents show AppHarvest hired contract workers from outside the region. At one point, as many as 500, the majority of its workforce, not locals. But that's not the image AppHarvest.
I want to make something clear here, and we can't tell exactly from this report, but just stop for a moment and think like, oh, they must have brought in people from Oklahoma, or maybe they brought in people from Arizona, like, or some of those Georgia workers who are, just more adept at this type of thing. You're in Eastern Kentucky. This is not exactly I don't know what the average salary is or hourly wages, but I can't imagine it's one of the highest in the country. I would suspect it's probably on the low end. So if they're bussing in independent contractors, they're bussing in immigrants. And I would bet that folks who are not documented, who have no recourse, and are not going to complain about 120 degrees working conditions, because they'll get sent, they'll get a phone call from ICE, or they'll get a visit from ICE.
Independent contractors, that's key there, right? Because that means that they have fewer protections as independent contractors in this context.
They have fewer protections. It also means that they're coming in from some type of third party,
staffing
worker staffing thing that probably has worked out a dynamic where, the liability associated with the status of these workers is, made vague. But go ahead.
And just I don't think they mentioned it in this piece, but Vance was not just like an early investor in this company. He was also a board member for quite a while. So like if he's going to try to wash his hands of this, it's going to take a lot of work.
I mean, that's a good point. Like Trump, he calls himself a job creator, and I create all these jobs. But you look at actually when he's gotten into issues with labor violations, which is famously the Trump Tower in Manhattan in the late 80s. He used immigrant Polish labor, undocumented. And when they started putting up a fuss because they were getting stiffed even on the short term and the weak terms that he was giving them, they threatened to hang the liaison between them and Trump threatened to bring in immigration deportation services from the feds. Like it's literally exactly the cartoon of what we say Capitol does here.
Yep.
At one point, as many as 500, the majority of its workforce, not locals. But that's not the image AppHarvest wanted the world to see. This is Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell visiting in 2021.
Mitch McConnell coming through. Were the migrant workers there at the time? You're laughing. I mean, I look at the video. It doesn't look like there's any.
They hid these guys. They took them out of the plant. They was gone. And then Mitch McConnell's giving a speech about all this work that AppHarvest has brought Eastern Kentuckians.
I like the idea of taking the tomato market away from the Mexicans. How about that?
So they were trying to hide the migrant workers.
Specifically, yeah.
This worker, who asked not to be identified, says the hiring of migrant workers became part of a mirage that AppHarvest was helping the region. He took this video as his co-workers clapped for visiting investors.
And anytime they did that, they kept workers off the floor doing our stationary parade while people come through. And it was awkward having to stand there and just be a prop.
A prop for what?
Look at all of these poor folks we're employing.
The worker says it's impossible to forget about his time at AppHarvest as J.D. Vance ascends to national politics.
He's gotten away with a lot of money and fame for pretending to be one of us.
OHIO.
He's just another grifter, just another carpetbagger, another tourist who wants to tell us what we are.
Vance left the board in April 2021 to run for the Senate. Shortly after, shareholders filed suit claiming they were misled. By 2023, AppHarvest had filed for bankruptcy a little more than 2 years after its public launch. But the workers in this failed startup say they are the real people in the Vance story.
Do you blame J.D. Vance for any of this?
I blame all of the original investors at AppHarvest. The original board of directors know what was coming. You would have had to have been an idiot not to have.
A spokesman for Vance said J.D.
said J.D. Vance is an idiot as a defense.
So how does he feel now?
Interesting. They're going to basically say that, oh, he left in 2021 and he did that in his run for Senate, even though...
Not acceptable. What is that job for?
Yeah.
How much? Why do you get paid that much for doing that crap? Like, that class of people has no idea about responsibility at all.
Yeah, he said that, I mean, the worker said it right there. He blames the early investors for setting up this exact framework. So, really good reporting there by CNN. And I hope we hear more of this, because that's why Walz is landing, I think, attacks on Vance, not just the weird stuff, but what goes under the radar is that they're effectively hitting him as essentially somebody who has exploited the population and people from where he came from to basically step on their backs to get to where he wanted, to be a wealthy venture capitalist, and then pathologizes their own poverty and blames them for it. It's a classic right-wing playbook.
I won't forget where I come from, because it's actually my meal ticket, exploiting it.
And I'll never forget it for its propagandistic purposes, and that's why I wrote a book about it.
Yeah, but the largest thing is, like, we can't be trusting investors and these people. It's great that Sean Fain and Brandon Mencia at the UAW and these people are getting, and Sarah Nelson. These are the job creators.
Right.
It's not these parasites that do nothing and get money for it.
Yep, a recall from Sean O'Brien and Mark Wayne Mullen, who I guess maybe have made up at this point, the Oklahoma senator and the head of the Teamsters. That's what their big row was about at the committee hearing. Like, Mark Wayne Mullen, who inherited his company and his family, was like, "Have you ever created a job, Mr. O'Brien?" Like, and this is the, pitched battle they try to create, these so-called job creators against the, dastardly trade unionists.
Right.
It's embarrassing, and it's used for, like, the Dakota Access Pipeline. It has such a strong propaganda value, and it needs to be, sort of, people need to come to, like, not understand it that way anymore.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.